Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll get you the top stories from India and the region. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, and for the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague Jagrati Dave from Washington, D.C. Jagrati, good to have you with us.
Good to be with you, Shubhendu. It's 10 a.m. here in Washington and 4 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, another obstacle for Gaza ceasefire talks as Hamas insists on implementing previous plans rather than discussing a new deal. Plus, find out what Elon Musk talked about with Donald Trump during a chat on his social media platform X. We'll cross to our correspondents around the world, but first, the headlines.
Mpox declared public health emergency in Africa. Disease outbreaks spreading from Congo to neighboring countries. Thousands infected. Bangladesh interim government head Yunus visits Hindu temple amidst attack on minorities. UN Chief Antonio Guterres urges Bangladesh's government to be inclusive. Elon Musk interviews Donald Trump. Republican presidential candidate says Biden dropping off the ticket was a coup. Ahead of Independence Day, India celebrates Har Ghar Tiranga campaign, encouraging people to hoist the national flag at home. In the latest on the Ukraine-Russia conflict, 2 people were killed after Ukrainian forces shelled a bus with civilians in a Russian-held city in eastern Ukraine. Russia has been fighting the Ukrainian incursion in the Kursk border region for a week already. Ukraine says on Tuesday it had no interest in occupying territory in Russia's Kursk region and that its major cross-border incursion would complicate Russian military logistics and its ability to send in more units to fight in Ukraine's east. And DD India's Dasha Chernishova has sent us this report from Moscow.
Russian military say Russian forces attacked the Ukrainian troops with missiles, drones and airstrikes as Russia is still fighting the Ukrainian incursion in its Kursk region. Russia's Ministry of Defense said it has prevented the Ukrainian attempts to advance near several settlements in the Kursk region. The MOD says Ukraine lost over 2,000 people in Kursk since the incursion began a week ago. More Ukrainian prisoners of war have also been taken. The Defense Ministry also released the footage of the Sukhoi Su-34 bombers striking the Ukrainian troops in the Kursk region and infantry storming the Ukrainian positions. In the meantime, 2,000 more people have been evacuated from the border areas of the Kursk region, and the Emergencies Ministry says 900 tons of humanitarian aid have been delivered to the residents. In Kursk region, the UN Humanitarian Rights Agency voiced concerns about the possible impact of the Ukrainian recent incursion on the civilian population. In Donbas, 2 people have been killed after Ukrainian forces shelled a bus with civilians in the city of Lysychansk on Tuesday, and more than 30 people have been wounded, according to local authorities. Dasha Chernishova reported in Moscow for DD India.
Meanwhile, the United Nations has raised concerns about civilian safety following Ukraine's attack on Russia's Kursk region. UN has urged both Russia and Ukraine to respect international law and safeguard civilians and non-military sites following reports of multiple civilian casualties. Ukraine, though, has also claimed that Kiev's forces controlled about 1,000 square kilometers of Russian territory as its ground forces tried to intensify through defensive lines. DD India's Megumi Lim reports from Kiev.
Well, fierce battles are still taking place in Russia's Kursk region. 8 days have passed since Ukraine launched this cross-border assault into Russia. And the latest that we're hearing from Ukraine's top commander, Alexander Syrsky, is that Ukrainian forces now reportedly control about 1,000 square kilometers of territory inside the Kursk region. Now, this is an incredibly rapid advance that Ukrainian troops were able to make, which really speaks to how unprepared Russian forces were in not only repelling these border attacks, but in protecting these border settlements on the Russian side. They truly were not expecting Ukrainian troops to pour through the border. Now, this is also perhaps the biggest battlefield advance that Ukrainian troops have seen in more than a year and a half. The last time they were able to capture territory, this much territory, was in 2022 when they were liberating Ukrainian territories from Russian occupation. Now, how long this will last is unclear because Russian forces are still advancing in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region. This is a sector that has seen fierce fighting for weeks and weeks now, and Russian forces are still inching forward, getting closer to key Ukrainian military strongholds. So we will see if Ukraine will have the resources to continue their attacks in both of these sectors, inside Ukraine and inside Russia.
Moving on, US President Joe Biden spoke to leaders of France, Germany, Italy and the UK to discuss de-escalating tensions in West Asia and a ceasefire in Gaza. Leaders said that they endorsed a call from the US, Qatar and Egypt for renewal of talks for concluding a Gaza ceasefire deal as soon as possible. The leaders also called on Iran to stand down its ongoing threats of a military attack against Israel. However, Iran Foreign Ministry has dismissed European nations' calls for restraint. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer spoke with Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian on Monday as part of de-escalation efforts to ease tensions in West Asia. Pictures shared online by 10 Downing Street shows Starmer on a phone call with captions saying that he was talking to Pezeshkian. Starmer asked Pezeshkian to refrain from attacking Israel and saying that war was not in anyone's interest. And we continue to track the developments in West Asia and Gaza conflict. Jagriti Dave is in Washington, D.C., gives us more on this and other important international developments. Jagriti, what are you learning on Gaza peace deal?
Well, Shubhendu, a Hamas official is insisting that the group wants to stick to a previously discussed ceasefire proposal rather than start new talks. Israel saying it will send a delegation to Thursday's talks, but Hamas has denied reports suggesting they'll be attending the meet. The United States expects the peace talks to go as planned on Thursday, saying a ceasefire agreement is still possible. US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken will hold discussions in Qatar, with Qatar, Egypt and Israel. And DD India's Sarah Coates has sent us this report from Tel Aviv.
From what we've been seeing over these past few months, it doesn't seem very likely. We've been at this point many, many times where there's been a lot of optimism that a ceasefire and a hostage deal may be achieved, but then there are just too many differences between the positions of Israel and Hamas. Now, Hamas has been saying it wants to go back to an original framework, back to talks that were held 6 months ago, saying it doesn't want to actually enter into new negotiations, while on the Israeli side, the position of Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, still remains unclear. And what we've got to remember here is the immense pressure that Netanyahu is under from his coalition, that he needs to keep him in power. Specifically, Itamar Ben-Gvir, the National Security Minister, he's once again threatening to walk away from the coalition to see it collapse if Netanyahu agrees to a deal that would see a ceasefire in the Strip and these hostages released. But at the same time, Netanyahu is under immense international pressure and also domestic pressure on the Israeli street from the families of these hostages who've been in Gaza now for 10 months. So really, it all hinges on these talks on Thursday, and I don't think anyone can actually predict the outcome of these talks because, firstly, you have to get these two warring parties to the table.
Now, in a live interview on X with its owner Elon Musk that was plagued by technical problems, US presidential candidate Donald Trump recounted the attempt on his life and pledged the largest deportation in US history if he's re-elected. Trump also criticised Vice President Kamala Harris over issues such as inflation and law and order, and claimed she was responsible for a supposed influx of illegal immigrants into US cities like New York.
Here's what's happening. Crime all over the world is down. And wait till you see the numbers that we have. You know, this is migrant crime. This is crime that's going to be. Yeah. And I saw it today in New York where somebody was knifed with raped the girlfriend of a man that stood there watching in New York in one of the shelters and started pulling out the knives, and bad things happened today. But this is happening every day. But these are rough people. Yeah. These are criminals that make our criminals look like nice people.
Mr. Trump also launched a scathing attack on US President Joe Biden and blamed him for the Ukraine war. He argued that his strong relationship with Russia's Vladimir Putin could have prevented the conflict. The interview faced a technical glitch and began after a long delay of over 40 minutes. Reacting to the interview, a spokesperson for US Vice President Kamala Harris described Donald Trump and Elon Musk as, quote, self-obsessed rich guys who will sell out the middle class and who cannot run a live stream in the year 2024. Harris is scheduled to deliver the first policy-centered speech in her new role as Democratic presidential candidate on Friday, which will be focused on tackling ways to lower costs. For more on Elon Musk's conversation with Donald Trump, let's speak to DD India's Nick Harper, who joins me from Washington. Hi, Nick. Just run us through some of the things that stood out from this 2-hour conversation.
Well, Jagruti, in many ways, Donald Trump returned to his common themes, the things that he thinks is wrong with America at the moment. And he spent much of that 2 hours relitigating the past, speaking about old gripes and unfounded claims, saying that he won the 2020 election, and spending much of the time attacking the very person that he's now no longer running against, Joe Biden. He did have some choice words, as you would imagine, for Kamala Harris. He called her incompetent, a third-rate, phony candidate. But bear in mind that this was billed by Elon Musk as a conversation rather than an interview. They align very much on ideology. So this wasn't a probing interview by an interviewer on a news channel, but rather a friendly conversational chat between the two men. And they spent much of the time also agreeing with one another. But much of this 2-hour conversation would undoubtedly have appealed to Donald Trump fans. He returned to many of the things that he's pushing hard on. The problem with immigration. He warned that as many as 60 million people from around the world, many of them being broken out of jails or mental institutions in other countries, would try and enter the US illegally if the Democrats win in November. He also chided Joe Biden for breaking the economy and said that the war in Ukraine would never have happened if he himself, Donald Trump, was still president, saying that Vladimir Putin wouldn't have dared to attack Ukraine if he'd been president rather than Joe Biden. And he spent much of the conversation at the beginning, about 25 minutes, rehashing what happened during that attempted assassination a few weeks ago. So much there that would have infuriated Democrats, but undoubtedly would have been welcomed by Republicans.
And Nick, the technical glitches dominated a lot of the news coverage. How do you think they dampened, or whether at all they dampened, Trump's return to X?
Well, I think they certainly caused problems for the former president. Bear in mind that he is now in a mode of trying to blunt that momentum we've seen in the Democratic Party in the last 3 weeks or so since Kamala Harris took over at the top of the ticket, replacing Joe Biden. There's been huge amounts of fundraising for her, real momentum, in particular in the online space. We've seen her Gen Z team creating viral memes, video clips, really helping to propel her in that social media space. So I think Donald Trump was trying to capture that. 40 minutes of technical glitches when hundreds of thousands of people were not able to get online certainly would not have helped him in that capacity. And of course, it's an embarrassing moment for X. You may remember in May last year, there were technical glitches besetting another candidate, Ron DeSantis of Florida, the Florida governor, when he launched his presidential bid. He did so on X in one of the spaces, and that failed in many problems besetting it with technical glitches. So it was a push for Donald Trump to get into that social media space to try and create more fundraising and momentum. I guess we'll see in the coming days whether that plays out when they release new fundraising numbers and we see new polling on how Donald Trump has done.
Thank you for that update, Nick. That was Nick Harper reporting for us from Washington. Next today, a recent seismological study has indicated a vast reservoir of water large enough to fill oceans may be hidden deep beneath the surface of Mars. This groundbreaking finding, based on data from NASA's InSight lander, suggests the Martian subsurface could have supported microbial life in the past, or that it could do so today. The study suggests much of the water that had been on the Martian surface didn't escape into space, but rather filtered down into the crust. One person has been killed and thousands of others have been evacuated as Greece battles its worst wildfire of the year. Milder winds and intense firefighting efforts have managed to reduce the intensity of the blaze. Hundreds of firefighters, backed by 6 aircraft for water drops, have been tackling the fire. People in Athens were seen wearing masks as smoke affected the air quality. And that's as Greece experienced the hottest months on record in June and July. DD India's Giles Gibson sent us this report from Rome.
Hundreds of firefighters are on the ground battling the most intense wildfire that Greece has seen so far this summer. Special aircraft are also being used to drop water from the skies above, and Greece has now said that it's requested help from its European neighbours. The European Commission says that 2 planes have been sent from Italy, a special helicopter from France, and fire crews are also being sent from multiple countries, including Serbia, Romania and Italy. Now, this blaze first broke out on Sunday in a place called Varnavas, which is about 30 kilometres to the north of Athens. And we now have reports coming in that a 64-year-old woman has been found dead in a suburb just to the north of the Greek capital. Now, when this fire broke out on Sunday, there were very strong winds in the area, and those winds helped to whip up the blaze and to spread it, with eyewitnesses saying that they saw flames up to 25 metres high. Those winds over the last 24 hours or so have now dropped, which is helping firefighters in their battle against this very strong blaze, but there are still extremely high temperatures in the area, up to 38 degrees Celsius. And forecasters are also saying that those winds could pick up again towards the end of the week, so firefighters are facing a very intense couple of days as they continue battling this wildfire and as reinforcements from other parts of Europe start to arrive. Giles Gibson in Rome reporting for DD India.
Temperatures in the UK have surged to their highest point of the year so far, with 34.8 degrees Celsius recorded in Cambridge. According to the Met Office, the high-pressure winds drawing in warm air from Europe caused temperatures to remain high on Monday, dropping to average levels on Tuesday. However, the British government had issued a warning that the heat could cause increased deaths among the elderly and put pressure on health and social care services. And that's it from me here in Washington. Back to you in the studio, Shubhendu.
Jagrati, thank you for joining us today. Have a good day. And staying with global weather updates, North Korea's state weather agency has stepped up efforts for accurate forecasting as the country experiences a heat wave, struggling with recent flooding as well. State Hydro Met Administration is taking innovative steps to rapidly and correctly provide weather information to concerned regions. Weather Department has said that an abnormal heat wave has been observed in Pyongyang since Monday, with maximum temperatures expected to be around 33 to 37 degrees Celsius in some areas. And still to come on DT India Global. Austria plans tougher counter-terror moves after Taylor Swift plot. 54 migrants rescued by Spanish NGO and Italian Coast Guard.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DT India Global. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Africa's top public health body, Centre for Disease Control and Prevention, has declared a public health emergency of continental security on Tuesday over an outbreak of Mpox that spreads from Democratic Republic of Congo to neighboring countries. Since the beginning of last year, some 27,000 cases have been reported in Congo and around 1,100 have been killed due to the disease. Mpox is a viral infection, spreads through close contact. It forms a pus-filled lesion on the body and causes flu-like symptoms that are usually mild but can kill. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has welcomed efforts of Bangladesh's interim government to restore calm, urged Bangladesh to consider voices of minorities and respect human rights. Meanwhile, United States has denied any role in ousting of Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who recently quit her position and fled to India. White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre called the allegations of US interference simply false. Meanwhile, Bangladesh head of interim government Nobel Peace Laureate Muhammad Yunus made a special visit to the Kineshwar temple in Dhaka. Accompanied by officials and security. Yunus met and spoke with attendees at the site of one of Bangladesh's holiest Hindu temples. The Hindu community, who make up about 8% of the Bangladesh's population of 170 million, have traditionally supported former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's Awami League party, which sparked people's anger after violent clashes between anti-quota protesters and security forces last month. UN Women India has announced the launch of Generation Equality Allies Meet to bring together gender advocates, brands, influencers and media platforms across sectors to amplify voices that promote gender equality and women's empowerment. The movement advocates for equal pay, equal sharing of unpaid care, and end to sexual harassment. DD India's Jessica Taneja caught up with UN Women India representative Susan Ferguson in New Delhi. Here's more.
We have with us Susan Jane Ferguson. She is the representative of the United Nations here at UN Women. Susan, thank you for speaking to us again. I'm glad to have you back on Doordarshan. The event was a wonderful success. Your idea of promoting gender equality and a conversation just beyond the existing subjects was quite exhilarating. What do you plan on achieving from initiatives like these?
We really plan on sort of spreading the messages around gender equality across the country because, you know, UN Women, we can only reach so many people, but I think our allies here today have huge audiences and really are influential and can really engage with populations we can't reach on changing the norms and the stereotypes about men and women, girls and boys in the country.
How many more subjects do you plan to cover in the future, and how many more events could we see where these conversations somehow bring awareness to various subjects, or perhaps make people aware of their rights as well?
Yes. Well, actually, we hope many events. So not just ours, but actually our influencers. You know, they're going to be using their platforms to really raise more awareness on gender equality, and they'll do that in a myriad of ways. So, you know, the cricketers will be using cricket as a forum to let people know about women's rights and women's issues, and women are just as good at cricketers as men. So we really are relying on them to use their own audiences to amplify the messages on gender equality.
As India gears up for Independence Day on August 15th, Home Minister Amit Shah organised a special Tiranga Yatra in the western state of Gujarat. State's Chief Minister Bhupendra Patel also accompanied Shah as part of the campaign on the streets of Ahmedabad. Amit Shah defined the Tiranga Yatra an expression of patriotism and a symbol of nation's commitment to develop India by 2047. The Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, IIFT, part of India's Ministry of Commerce and Industry, has achieved a notable advancement in the National Institutional Ranking Framework, rising from the 27th place in 2023 to 15th this year. Congratulating the Institute on its impressive accomplishment, the Minister of Commerce and Industry, Piyush Goyal, expressed confidence that the Institute will soon become a world-class institution, significantly contributing to India's remarkable growth in trade and investments. Let's now turn to other stories making news around the world. Austria's Chancellor Karl Nehammer spoke about tightening counter-terrorism measures after recent foiling of ISIS plot at singer Taylor Swift's concert scheduled in Vienna and 2 other cities. The set of measures include giving security services the ability to monitor communications sent on messaging apps currently not permitted in the country. Spanish NGO Open Arms and the Italian Coast Guard rescued 54 migrants at sea off the southern coast of Italian island of Lampedusa. The rescued migrants were given life jackets and assisted on board in an Italian Guardia di Finanza vessel to the island of Lampedusa. Damascus held an exhibition for Humvee printed products in an attempt to revive the art on the verge of decimation due to the war in Syria since 2011. The exhibition, organized by Wolfi, attracted lots of people. The Humvee print is an age-old craft based on wooden blocks and ink made from natural ingredients. The 2024 Paris Olympic Games delivered moments of awe-inspiring athleticism, some even seeming to challenge the laws of physics. Take, for example, Brazilian Olympic surfer Gabriel Medina's remarkable wave ride in Tahiti garnered global acclaim, especially with his photograph becoming a viral sensation at 2024 Paris Summer Games. The image was captured by AFP photographer Jérôme Brulé. Take a look. The athlete and the photographer should share the compliments. Meanwhile, that's all for this edition of DD India Live and Global. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan this QR code on your screens to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Global. Namaskar.